Hello again, and welcome to the 10 February 2017 edition of Portsmouth This Week. Our guest today is Portsmouth Fire Chief Mike Cranson. Welcome back to the show, Mike.
Thanks.
It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, we're going to discuss the recently created East Bay Heavy Rescue Squad and the special equipment that goes along with it, and we'll get to that in a second. I just wondered, how did the town fare during this winter storm we just had last night, Winter Storm Nico, I think it was? How did we make out?
We made out pretty well, Doug. I think, first of all, I think we were extremely fortunate that we started out with a little bit more rain than we expected. I think that really cut down on the snow totals for the town. But conditions did quickly deteriorate, and we were busy. Both the police department was very busy, and we were very busy in the fire department. But fortunately, there was no major incidents that ended poorly. We had some challenges that we faced. We had an ambulance get stuck in the snow, but our DPW department is so fantastic that they were on scene within 10 minutes, and we were able to get our ambulance out of the snow, and no patients certainly were affected. But it was a challenge, and it's nice to know that we have the police department and the DPW to rely on for help in those kind of situations.
Absolutely, and it was miserable. I can attest to that. Okay, the new Joint Rescue Squad. I guess the basic question is, why do we need it, and how do we get it? How did we get it?
Well, we need it because we from time to time we run into situations, Doug, where we have an incident that requires some high-tech either equipment or specialized training, and these instances don't happen very often, so it doesn't really justify the expense involved in buying the specialized equipment or paying for people to take the specialized training. But when they do happen, you really want to have that stuff. So the advantage or the benefit of having this East Bay Heavy Rescue team is now we have equipment locally on Aquidneck Island to serve all three communities on the island, and also respond to any emergency in the state if we're called upon. And we have a funding mechanism that will pay for the training and this equipment that we otherwise wouldn't be able to have.
Now, is this kind of just a extension of the current mutual aid? Because I know you work with both the Middletown and Newport fire departments on this.
Right. Well, we work with several communities normally for mutual aid. We work with the Navy Fire Department. We work with Tiverton, Bristol, Middletown, and certainly Newport, and even Little Compton. So we work with all of these departments. So although this particular discipline, if you will, of the heavy rescue isn't something that's normally been part of our mutual aid run system, it will be now. Our intention is once the team is fully formed and trained and ready to work, it'll be just plugged in as another resource in our what we refer to as our mutual aid run card system.
Sure. What kind of special equipment are we talking about here?
So we're talking about everything that ranges from needing to perform high-angle rescue, meaning like ropes, somebody hanging off one of the bridges, with the people working on the bridges and that kind of stuff, to confined space, people caught, down in a hole, trench rescue, or some type of industrial or construction
Building
accident.
collapse or something like that.
Yeah, and sort of the pinnacle of all the training is structural collapse. So if we have a building come down, we'll have trained personnel and the equipment that we can use to cut through concrete, and there's part of this equipment are these cameras on the end of long, thin poles that can be we can drill a hole and then send these cameras down there to find out if there's victims, and the condition of these victims there's a lot of very expensive and very highly technical equipment that everyone on Aquidneck Island is going to have the benefit of.
Yeah, that's great. We were down at the Middletown Fire Department on Wednesday taking a look at the equipment, and let's take a look at the video that we did down there. Okay, now we're here at the Middletown Fire Station, and Mike, we're going to talk about the heavy-duty rescue equipment you guys have. Do you want to talk a little bit about what's behind us here?
Thanks, Doug. So we have this is the East Bay Heavy Rescue. This is the actual truck, and you can see all the equipment that is on this truck. This is equipment that no municipality on the island would be able to justify the purchase of by themselves, but by having taking part in this program and being part of this team, we have these capabilities and equipment now here on Aquidneck Island. If we just look quickly, you can see we have boxes of chainsaws and you know, all kind of tools, clamp kits and Stanley power tools, and we have a generator and all kinds of saws and rope rescue equipment. And this equipment is so expensive that to purchase, for instance, a generator that I'm looking at over your shoulder would pretty much wipe out the town of Portsmouth's equipment budget for the fire department.
Right.
You know, so it's a great opportunity for all three departments to not only be able to use this equipment every day, but to have it strategically located on the island, so that if we need it, we wouldn't have to call, you know, for it to be delivered from, say, you know, Situate.
So this is the kind of equipment that's kind of above and beyond what any normal fire department would have on their own.
Absolutely, and that's, you know, that's why when I said that we couldn't justify buying it, we don't need, you know, heavy-duty chainsaws all the time.
All the time, right.
But we may need them once or twice a year, so it's hard to justify that purchase. But now we have access to that equipment when that you know, unfortunate time comes.
Sure. You want to talk a little bit about the background to this and how we got this gigantic truck? And
so this has been in the works for probably close to a year, and it started with the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency put together this team, and it was called Urban Search and Rescue for the state of Rhode Island. It came as a result of the 9/11 attacks, 9/11 attacks, and you know, the states decided that they need to have some type of equipment in place to respond to a catastrophic incident before FEMA can actually respond. So the state of Rhode Island purchased, I think, 3 of these trucks and all of this equipment, and put together the USAR team. Now, over the years, members have come and gone, and the training has been, you know, at different levels. And Director Peter Gaynor came in as the, he's not new anymore, but when he came in as the new emergency management director for the state, he said, how can we better deploy these assets and serve the state better? So the plan was born there to have this truck situated in the East Bay, Middletown Fire Department, and the team that will make up the responders for this truck is going to consist of firefighters from the towns of Portsmouth, Middletown, and the city of Newport. So there'll also be another team in Warwick that'll cover the West Bay, and the goal is to get the whole state covered, but to have the equipment already out in the field so that we can get it and use it as quickly as possible. So we've been in the process over the last year of coming up with a memorandum of understanding between each municipality and the state to provide things like liability protection, certainly funding, training, and just to make sure that we're doing it in the most efficient manner that we can.
Sure. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about some of the apparatus that we're looking at. It's mostly things in boxes, but like you say, a heavy-duty generator.
Yeah, we have some heavy-duty generators. We have a lot of compressed air cylinders, acetylene torches, you know, regular carpentry equipment. You can see if you look up top, Doug, we have these big giant 4x4s that run probably about 16 feet long. These are all things that we would use if we had to shore up a building, if we had some type of structural collapse, or we had, I know in Portsmouth we had a crane tip over on the Sconnet River Bridge last year, and we need to quickly stabilize that piece of equipment so it doesn't, you know, obviously end up in the river. So this, these tools and the wood and the chains and the stuff that is on this truck will support that, and we'll be able to to get that equipment to the scene much more quickly than we could have in the past.
Okay, and this is essentially a state resource that's stationed here in Middletown for the East Bay.
Right, so it's a state resource, but it's been deployed out to Middletown. The town of Middletown actually took title of the vehicle, has registered the vehicle through the town of Middletown, but it's a shared resource with the town of Portsmouth and the city of Newport, and we will respond anywhere in the state that calls us for help.
Sure. Now, how many Portsmouth firefighters are going to be trained on knowing what's in this truck?
Well, the goal is to train all the firefighters at least to know what's in the truck. But as far as team members that actually are certified up to a technician level, we're looking at 8 firefighters in Portsmouth. The goal is to have 2 people on each shift to at least begin the process of getting this truck and getting it deployed should a major event happen.
Okay.
So we have, in Portsmouth, we have 4 shifts of firefighters, and if we can get 2 firefighters on each shift that have the training and expertise, when an event happens, they can, number 1, identify the need for the equipment, and number 2, get it rolling.
And you'll have somebody that's on watch, that's trained at all times down there.
That's correct, and that's also the goal for the town of Middletown and the city of Newport as well, to have trained personnel, at least a few on scene that can get this truck moving with the equipment on it, and then be able to reevaluate what is needed, if more resources are needed or not.
Right. Now, I would think there's some expense involved in training folks. How is that going to work out? Where is the money coming from?
Well, fortunately, we have it built into the memorandum of understanding. Much like the equipment is very hard to justify the purchase of from each municipality, so is the training. The training can be quite expensive because we need our responders, obviously, to get the best training and to be certified to a national standard to make sure that we're using best practices. The way the funding for training has been set up is such that the funding for training will be given by the state in the form of a grant.
Yeah, so I can see this could be used a lot in life or death situations. You know, you think about a kid or somebody being underneath a house or something else that fell down. So this could be a lifesaver, this equipment, that you wouldn't have access to normally.
Right. Unfortunately, we don't have those types of calls often, but if and when we do have those types of calls, it's nice to know that we have the equipment available here on the island that we can get on scene right away.
Yeah, and that helps out all the communities here in the East Bay.
Absolutely, it helps us all out, particularly if we're looking at a hurricane or some type of situation where maybe we don't have access to all the bridges and stuff. Having this life-saving equipment here on the island should provide a level of security and comfort to all the people who reside here.
Yeah, I think especially the idea that we're on an island and you can't get off here during a hurricane sometimes. So this is great. So when is the training going to start, Mike, do you think?
We're in the process right now. The Rhode Island Fire Academy is just finishing up their 2nd phase of construction, and they're scheduled to start their first municipal firefighters class in March. We're in the process of sitting down with the director of the Fire Academy and scheduling our first ropes class to get our responders up and running.
Now, where would those classes be held, here or?
We have a couple of options. We can have the classes at the Rhode Island Fire Academy, which is in Exeter, or, and this is what we're hoping to do, is have the classes here at the Middletown Fire Department, because they have such a beautiful new facility, as we've seen walking around. They have a big community room that can be used for training, and they also have a fire tower that was newly constructed that's out back for training purposes.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the community room here at the Middletown Fire Department. Hopefully our police department will have something like that when that gets built too. Yeah, so what we have is a capability we didn't have before. It's basically being funded by the state. It seems to me there's no downside to this thing, and we're going to have our guys trained to operate this stuff, again, free to us.
Right, it's free to us. We spent a lot of time getting the memorandum of understanding put into place, and the good thing is we have a mechanism for funding, but we also have some language in the agreement where, let's say the funding mechanism runs out, which we don't anticipate will happen, but certainly you know.
Politics are politics.
Right. You know, we can walk away from this agreement at any point. Any of the 3 municipalities that are involved, if we decide that this isn't good for either the taxpayers or the citizens or the responders, we can say that this isn't working anymore and we can walk away from it.
Or find other sources of funding.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, because
No,
I think that after the first couple times this is used, I think we're going to have proof that something like this really works.
Yeah, I think it's a good program that we're putting together. I think it was really forward thinking of the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency, in particular Director Gaynor, to bring forward this idea, and I'm really proud to be part of it.
Yeah, and kudos to you and the fire chiefs on the island here for getting involved in this stuff. Let me ask you as kind of a side question. You mentioned the Rhode Island Fire Department or Fire Academy. Do we send Portsmouth kids through there or when they're coming here?
Historically, we haven't. There's been a Rhode Island Fire Academy for years that puts on classes, and we actually have some instructors that work in conjunction with the academy, but there's never been a municipal fire academy to send new recruits to. Like in the police department, any new police officer that's hired in the state gets sent to the municipal police academy to get trained and certified. We will have that now starting in March for the fire service in Rhode Island, which is, in my opinion, a long, something that we've been waiting a long time for,
Yeah, that seems
and just a wonderful thing, especially for a community like Portsmouth or Middletown or Newport, which are smaller departments. When we have to train people in-house or send them out, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
This is going to be a resource that is available to us that will get people certified to all the national standards in the most cost-effective way.
Yeah, that sounds great too. So that's also good news, I think.
Right.
Thanks very much, Chief. I appreciate the briefing on what you've got down here, and our thanks too to Chief Ron Dory of the Middletown Fire Department for letting us come down and hosting us here. Let's go back to the studio now. Okay, that's a lot of heavy-duty equipment. When will the training of our heavy rescue squad members begin?
So we're in the process of sitting down with the director of the Rhode Island Fire Academy to schedule our first class, which will be the ropes class. What we wanted to do is each fire department on the island, in Portsmouth, I solicited all of my firefighters to see who would be interested in taking part in such a program and being part of this team. So once I was able to get 8 firefighters, I know Middletown got about 8 firefighters, and I believe the city of Newport has at least 8, maybe close to 10. What we wanted to do is identify what training these individuals had already or may need, and then decide, where we need to begin. So it looks like right now we have 24 firefighters on the island, and we're going to put together a ropes class to get everyone certified up to a technician level.
Okay, that's the first class.
That's the first class. After we finish the ropes class, then we'll move on to confined space, trench rescue, and like I said earlier, the structural collapse.
Yeah, and the requirement for 8 from our fire department is, so there's at least 2 on every watch. I believe you guys are on a 4,
yeah, we have 4 different shifts of firefighters, or platoons, as sometimes we refer to them. And so there's 4 shifts, and there's 8 firefighters assigned to each shift. So our goal is to have at least 2 members of this new East Bay Heavy Rescue team on duty at all times, so that should a emergency occur that we need to deploy this team, we can have people that are on duty respond right away and at least get the truck and the equipment started while we call for the rest of the team.
Will this training provide skills and knowledge to our firefighters that'll help them during their non-heavy duty kind of...
Right. A lot of these skills that they'll learn, like let's take for instance rope rescue. When you take the rope rescue class, you learn a lot of skills just as far as tying life safety knots and things that are specific to that discipline, but they can also transfer over to fighting a fire. A lot of times we use rope systems and that kind of stuff, whether it's hauling equipment up to a roof or lowering somebody down out of a window. Certainly we would prefer to have a ladder, but there are times when the skills that'll be learned in this class can can transfer over to the fire side as well.
Yeah, I would also think an added benefit would be you'd have people on each shift that kind of know what we have and know when they need it. When they go out on a call or something and they find, holy mackerel, the building's collapsed, we got a kid underneath there, we need to call this heavy rescue squad.
Right. So the plan is we're going to have these members of the team, say 8 members in Portsmouth, that'll be trained up to a technician level. But the ultimate goal is, once those members are trained, is to bring that equipment to the town of Portsmouth for, like, let's say a week, and get everyone in the department trained up to at least an awareness level.
Right.
So the guy who's not on the team or the girl who's not on the team can identify what the equipment is, where it's located on the truck, and how to set it up.
Yeah. So it sounds all like a win-win to me. Who will be responsible for the maintenance of the truck?
Well, the truck's going to be housed in the town of Middletown.
And the equipment, I
And
guess.
you're right, all the equipment and the truck is housed in Middletown. The truck is registered to the Middletown Fire Department, but the funding mechanism to pay for the maintenance and repair of any equipment or replacement of equipment or repair of the vehicle is all through a grant through the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency.
Gee, the state actually helping us out. What a concept.
It's a great idea, and kudos to Director Peter Gaynor of the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency, who's spearheaded this effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if there's a major catastrophe somewhere in the East Bay region, who has the ultimate call? Like, maybe there are more than one thing going on. Who has the ultimate call as to where the truck goes with the squad?
Well, the initial responders to whatever the event would be would show up and identify the need for this equipment in this.
Okay, that might be the fire chief might in a town where it starts.
Right. If there's something that happened in Portsmouth, let's use the crane that tipped over on the Sconnet River Bridge last year, just because it's a fairly recent event and one that comes to mind in which this equipment could have been utilized. So I would show up and say, we could really use that, and I would call back to my fire alarm and say, go ahead and pull the run card, which means dispatch that heavy rescue team.
Yeah. Now, was it necessary to establish any kind of a different chain of command or anything? Like, for example, it seems to me that, well, you would know, presumably if somebody had to use that equipment, say in Newport, you would know that it's being used in Newport, so it may not be available for a while in Portsmouth if you had something come up.
That's true. We would certainly know because Portsmouth actually runs East Bay Control. So if any community in the East Bay has, whether it's a fire or other type of event, we help them already as far as deploying resources to if Newport has a fire today, we're responsible for getting them help. So that's something we would certainly know right away. The good news is there's another team in Warwick, and I know the city of East Providence is in the process of putting together their own team. So although one team may be tied up, the chances of all 3 teams being tied up are very rare, and I think that we would be able to work through that.
So there'll essentially be 3 teams in Rhode Island deployed in different areas, which makes sense.
They actually refer to the Warwick team and the East Bay team. The Warwick team is the West Bay team. The West Bay and the East Bay team actually constitute one team, according to the state. But we're just broken up and deployed, in an effort to be strategic in our deployment.
Sure. Let me talk for a minute about the Fire Academy. Again, we mentioned that briefly during the video, but how did we do our training before this Fire Academy became available to us?
So what we do in Portsmouth, when we hire new recruits, we need to get these recruits certified up to a Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, and hazardous materials operations levels before, and then they need to learn our own local standard operating procedures and protocols before they can count towards staffing and until we feel that they're safe.
Can they do some of that on the job, like working with?
We certainly deploy them out in the field with guys to observe, but we run in-house classes. We're fortunate enough where we have some highly trained firefighters who actually work as instructors for the Rhode Island Fire Academy. So typically we put on a class rate in-house, and then when we have to do the live, there's a lot of practical evolutions that are involved in the certifications. When that happens, we send them up to to Exeter, to the fire academy. The problem is it becomes expensive locally because you end up having to pay instructors overtime to come in and teach the class, and firefighters come in from off duty to help, put these classes on.
Sure.
and proctor exams and so forth. So having the Municipal Fire Academy actually complete Phase 2 that we talked about in the video, they now have a classroom setting, and they're going to hold municipal fire academies for new recruits, much like the Municipal Police Academy does.
Yeah, and so we would basically be, let's say a young person wants to become a firefighter. So they apply, et cetera. They meet all the physical, mental, scholastic, whatever requirements. Will we then be sending people to a class in an academy that, like the police department, they go through a set standard sort of education, and then they get qualified at the end, and they have like a graduation, and then...
Yes, that's what we will do.
Now, will that offer us any better accreditation or new accreditation or anything by having those folks train like that, or does it make any difference?
Well, number one, it'll certainly be more cost effective for the town. But number two, it'll allow us to have our recruits and all the recruits in the state trained
To a common standard.
To a common standard. I mean, we certainly train our recruits to the NFPA standards of firefighter 1 and 2. But when you physically do the training together, statewide, then when we, in a town like Portsmouth, where we rely on heavily on mutual aid, when we're in an academy somewhere else with folks from Newport, Middletown,
you get to know them, yeah.
You get to know them, and you're all learning the same way to do things. So it makes you better in the long run when you're working together.
Now, do you have any idea how many people are going to be going through a class at the Fire Academy?
I don't know how big each class will be. My guess would be somewhere between 20 and 30.
20 and 30. You mentioned that. First, do we have women in the fire department?
Presently, no. We don't have any female firefighters, but
okay, but
certainly
women can certainly apply, and if they're interested in things like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We encourage all people to apply if they're interested in that career.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I'd like to express my appreciation for the work that you and the Chief Ron Dory of the Middletown Fire Department and Chief Peter Connerton of the Newport Fire Department have done in pulling all this together. This to me is an example. It gives us a capability that we didn't have before, that we'd have to kind of call outside to get, and with all the delays involved. And during a storm, when the bridges are closed, we couldn't get it at all. Now it's on island. So I think you did a great job. And the interesting thing to me, too, is it's minimal cost to the taxpayers. So very well done.
Well, thank you.
Guys.
We're excited about it.
Okay, thank you. This is Doug Smith. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time on Portsmouth This Week. Town historian Jim Garman will be giving a lecture on the Prohibition era in Newport County entitled Guns, Boats, Bullets, and Booze at 6:30 on Thursday, 16 February at the Portsmouth Library. The lecture is sponsored by the library and the Portsmouth Historical Society. It's free and open to the public. Call the library at 683-9457 to reserve your seat.